All right, everybody, welcome back to Ideally. I'm your host, Alec Ogg, and on this podcast, we are helping creative entrepreneurs with ADHD, find their ideal careers and fulfill their potential and create the success they want because, we're plagued with underachievement. So we're going to grow together by learning more about entrepreneurship and personal development. And in today's episode, my guest is the entrepreneur who founded one of the coolest bike shops ever. His name is Mr. Clark Butcher. We get into him growing up with ADHD, how he started Victory Bicycle Studio, his company, and why he is so passionate about being a hands-on, present business owner. Clark has a ton of experience and is passionately opinionated, and I think y'all will really enjoy this. We also talk about the balance of the artist and the business owner, and Clark is more business owner and I am more artist, and I have a lot to learn from him. So I think you guys will too, and enjoy this interview with Clark Butcher of Victory Bicycle Studio. Clark, thank you so much for coming into the studio, for being here, bringing some Miller High Lifes here.
Hell yeah, there was plenty of options, but I only saw one.
Yeah, we're drinking some Miller High Lifes that are about the size of, what size is this?
I think this is like usually you get these in like dry counties, right? Like I don't know, it's, they're ponies.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah, ponies.
Oh, that's a good name for it.
And you see Coronas in this bottle size too, but it's funny, it's my favorite beer, and they didn't have any normal size bottles, and I didn't want cans. I don't know why I like a cold bottle.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's fun. We got a ton of these.
But yeah, so we got the tiny little High Lifes, and I'm excited to talk to you about entrepreneurship because you're like the entrepreneur pro.
And thank you. It is definitely a lifestyle.
So, Clark, can you tell us who you are and how you got into the world of cycling?
Yeah. Which, heads up, by the way, did not think getting into cycling was entrepreneurship, right? It was a sport. It was an activity. I sucked at basketball, baseball, t-ball, soccer, swimming, whatever my parents attempted to put me in was, it never worked. So cycling was purely an activity. Had no clue it was going to lead to entrepreneurship in so many ways. But how'd I get into it? Yeah, my dad. My dad got me into running at a young age. I was 7. I was always going with him to area 5Ks because they always had a 1 mile fun run. And that was for the kids. So he would do the 5K and then he'd come do the 1 mile with me. And one day in Germantown at the Mayor's Cup 5K in Germantown, they didn't have enough entries for the 1 mile fun run. So they canceled it. And dude, I was distraught. And age 7, my dad's like, hey, how about just run with me in the 5K and we'll turn around whenever you're ready. Dude, I didn't turn around. And I did a 5K at the age of 7. And from then on, my dad was like, well, you're coming every weekend then. We're doing one every weekend. And so it was just fun.
Yeah.
Because he was not, like my dad was not fast, is not fast, and continues to not be fast, but he is super consistent.
Yeah.
And there every time and finishes every time. And
he just likes running?
Loves.
Okay.
Loves. And anyway, so kept running and that blossomed into, obviously I want to go further. I want to go faster. And then, by age 9, I was doing half marathons. And
Jesus.
Sometime around at the age of 9, there was an ad in the newspaper for a Germantown Kids Triathlon. And my dad was like, hey, I'm going to sign you up for this. You're going to do this. And I was like, sounds awesome. I don't swim. I hate swimming. I hated swimming. I still don't like swimming. And I had a BMX bike. Perfect. Let's do it. And everything was about fun. And I'll never forget, I came back from that kids triathlon and I was like, Dad, I passed everyone on the bike. And I mean, dude, I was on a BMX bike, right? Like you had rich kids that had road bikes already. This is a kids triathlon. I think everyone was under the age of 12 or 13. But yeah, I had a ball, and that's really where the cycling started. And did not get a bike really until the age of 12. And did that, actually, you're going to laugh. I did that by, I was in Boy Scouts.
Me too.
And
proud Eagle Scout here.
Hey, Eagle Scout too.
Oh.
Damn cool, man.
Yeah.
Eagle Scout, Chickasaw Council.
Hey, yeah. Were you in Order the Arrow?
100%.
Me too. But I digress. We can get back into scouting and see how that works.
No, I get excited when somebody else is in Eagle Scout, and you did too.
Yeah,
You just got excited because you don't ever, people always go, no shit. I'm like, card carrying, bro. I got it in my wallet.
Well, I always think that, like, growing up, Scouts is so uncool, but it's also fun in its own way. That there's always that dichotomy of like, I don't want to go camping this weekend. I want to go hang out with my friends, but then you go camping and you have fun.
Had a ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Had a ball.
And then as an adult, you look back and you're like, thank God I had all those experiences, because you don't have time to do that as an adult. And like, you learn all these skills that no one else knows.
Dude, I wouldn't be caught dead in my scout uniform spotted by high school buddies.
Exactly.
No, what? But I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I feel like a lot of people quit because they just don't have actual friends in scouting. But if you have like a good group of friends in there, it's awesome.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. But it was so you're gonna laugh. I still running, little running Clark, and way into it. And in scouts, I'll never forget, our troop had signed up to cook burgers and hot dogs at a mountain bike race down in Mississippi. And better believe it, I'm in, right? It's for the troop. The whole time they're watching these mountain bikers go by, right? And that's in my mindset. You know, I'm constantly fidgeting. I'm high energy, and it was a total match, and that's why running worked for me. And so not long after, was able to get a mountain bike, and it was funny. I was first in the triathlon stuff, then went more mountain biking before completely quitting mountain biking to focus exclusively on road, and that was all through kind of in and out of college days, early 20s, and then only to pick back up mountain biking again. So it's funny. I've never quit. I've never taken a break. It's just I've pivoted, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. This is a slight detour on mountain biking, but I'd never like gone official mountain biking, like the real deal. But my girlfriend's from outside of Seattle and like those mountainous areas. And I went and visited, and her stepdad was like, hey, like my brother left these like $8,000 mountain bikes in the garage. Like, do you want to go take them out? And I was like scared because I'm like, I don't know how to do it. But it was so much fun on those crazy trails. It's like riding a roller coaster.
And a nice bike, man, is confidence inspiring. You know, like, dude, cool shit rides well.
Oh
right?
my God. Yeah. I was like, I would be doomed if I was on like a bad bike, but this thing was saving all my mistakes. But like I saw the light. I was like, okay, I get why people do this every day. And I went on to do it like 4 more times on that trip because I was like, can we do it again?
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, and mountain biking obviously in the South is a little different, but like if you want to dive in, we can dive into my mountain biking career. But but yeah, so it's really, that's how I got into cycling, was really via running, and it was something that turned out I was really good at, and I was better at cycling than running. And for instance, so at the age of 14, I started competing on the bike, which was a very, 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 very small group of people. It was not real cool. This was pre-Lance, right? This is very early on, and cycling on the roads, especially in the South here, like you were wearing funny clothing, right? Like, it was all a lifestyle to me, and it still is, which is why it's so unchanged. I've been doing it most of my life, but at the time, you know, it was not super common, right? A huge group ride in Memphis on the best spring day had 30 people. Now there's, I don't know, probably 5 rides every day throughout the city that bring an average of 50 to 70 people, right?
Wow.
Like it's, the sport has grown so dramatically and everything. But man, I was in that culture, and I was racing, and we were traveling, and it just turned out that was my forte. And you know, before I knew it, I was hanging out with older people, and because at the time there were 6 registered juniors in the state of Tennessee, meaning under the age of 18, that had a license to race. So yeah, man, all my buddies, all my sphere of influences were middle-aged dudes, and historically kind of like us. Yeah. Right? Like same personality, just a couple years older, but and you know, and they transitioned, and you know, this is a sport that typically brings a very good group of people, and there's a lot of successful folks, you know, that participate in the sport and the culture. And so, yeah, I was really fortunate to be able to be surrounded by a lot of really smart, bright guys that really took me in.
The sphere of influence definitely shapes you.
100%.
Yeah. That's why I like podcasts too, is because you can kind of almost feel like you're rubbing shoulders with people that aren't in your proximity, you know?
Yeah. And man, and it's funny, Alec, when you think about this. So when you think about it right now, you think about networking, right? And that's so cheesy, and that's so not real. Dude, I was 14 years old coming and giving my heart out on a POS road bike with worn out gear, ill-fitting equipment, but I loved it and I had a cool attitude. And fortunately, a lot of nice, cool guys took notice. And so, yeah, it was totally real and organic. And these are friendships. And it's funny now looking back, like, I have folks that come into the picture all the time that you can tell are looking to that have an ulterior motive, right? To getting to this group of people. And it's just totally different, right? And I think that's why it was such a match for me, because I needed a sphere of influences, and I had scouts, right? But there was nothing really professional. I didn't come from that as a household. My folks have always, not always, but they were always working for others, right? So I never had that at home, and I was surrounded by successful dudes that taught me a lot of basics.
So you get into cycling that way. Can you describe the moment when you had your kind of entrepreneurial leap into creating Victory Bicycle Studio?
Yeah, the leap into entrepreneurship, I'll go even back further to it, was incredibly clear. I mean, look, I grew up super middle class, right? And I never had the nicest equipment, never had anything. I had to work for everything. I started working at the age of 14 on my 14th birthday. I was the cow at Chick-fil-A on Germantown Road. I couldn't wait to work. It was on my birthday. I went and applied. Dude, they hire at 14. I need money. But previous to that, I mean, look, I was charging whatever quarters you got in your pocket to give you a ride around the neighborhood. I had a bike trailer that I could hook up to my bike and I could give you a ride, and it was fun. It was like an amusement, right? So just little hustles. Mm-hmm. I think we talked about that before we turned on the mic, between the hustle and a business. So Chick-fil-A, needless to say, that was not my career climax. I was able to move on from there, and I ultimately landed a job at a bike shop. Right before I was 15, actually, I landed a job at a local bike shop here, and it went great, and I loved it, and I loved the sales floor, right? I was a know-it-all. Dude, I was a know-it-all. I was this hyperactive kid that was not good in school, but I studied bike magazines. I mean, I knew every part spec on everything in that store. And, and they really helped groom me into, you don't want to be that guy, but figuring out how to turn that into a salesman, right? And how to be charismatic and accommodating. And so it's funny. And that was just loving it, right? And that was a job. That was not a career. That was a job. I was 15, and I was into 16. I think I worked there almost 3 years, because I remember actually driving there. At first, I was riding my bike there. And it wasn't until another bike shop hired me, and another bike shop called me at the store there and said, "Hey, Clark, we'd like you to come join us. Say yes, and you'll get $2 more an hour, and you'll start in 2 weeks." And dude, I was making like $650, $675, which was not bad for 15, 16-year-old. Yeah. And I was like, yes. Right. And so join them in that shop, man. And I'm not going to name drop because they're still around. It's not fair, but it's we were not busy, and they let me order off the closeout lists. Right.
And what does that mean exactly?
So pretty much any retail store that sells goods, that buys at wholesale and sells at retail, has a distributor or many distributors or vendors that they buy from. Well, when there's not crazy supply and demand like we have right now in COVID times, there were closeouts. There were times like, hey, company has way too many of that blue t-shirt size medium, so they're all 40% off right now. Well, I saw it and I was like, well, can I order on these? Like, just for me personally. And I said, dude, absolutely. Like, what does it matter? It's on the closeout list. Like, so, I was making $860, $875 an hour. So it wasn't like I had a big budget, but it started, and I was like, well, eBay was really in its heyday. And this is really early on in eBay, before it got super unreliable. So I was 16 years old, and I was selling on eBay, and I was buying, at first it was $100, right? My paychecks were $250, $280, and I was spending $100 on closeout stuff. Dude, it could be a hammock. It could be a t-shirt size XXL that's green. Like, it could be whatever. And I was selling it on eBay, most everything at Keystone. So most everything at double the margin. And at 16, you could also have a FedEx account. and there's a FedEx distribution center right by my house in Cordova. And so, dude, I would just take the boxes from the retail store at night to repackage my closeout stuff, and I'd drop it off in the evenings. So heads up, you obviously see I don't ever talk about high school. I hated school. This was all post-school hours.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, before I knew it, it was like $300 and $500. And now I'm spending well more than my paycheck on these closeout lists. Finally, they put a stop to it. But I realized obviously what was happening. And that was really where in my mind it clicked. And I started thinking about how many avenues could I take with this, like buying stuff right before it goes completely out of style and flipping it.
Yeah.
And it was, dude, my parents thought it was a riot. I was making great money in high school. High school, I did real well. Not in school.
Yeah.
But I was, ain't no doubt I had a strong bank account in high school, and I was doing it all myself. My folks didn't. They thought it was a riot.
So you had an entrepreneurial muscle early on.
Oh yeah, I paid attention, and I just understood numbers were easy if you hit ×2 on everything. Like it all made sense.
That's a good quote.
And I needed a fast return, right? Like when you're super active and you can't pay attention to the typical things, man, it had to be quick, right? It wasn't until later in life that I started selling real estate and seeing longer closings and having that patience, right? And chasing and following up on sales, right? And like dude, I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
I was 16. I'm listing this, and in 7 days, I'm going to make $60, bro. And I got 10 of them online right now, right? Like that was in my mindset, just ×2.
So in high school, you were saying you didn't really enjoy school and you had all of this energy. Would you consider yourself hyperactive?
Clinically, what do you say?
ADHD?
Yeah, not assigned. What do you prescribed or
diagnosed?
Oh, man. So I was on Ritalin, and this was first grade. I know a lot about this because my mom was in learning disabilities, and she taught special education, not like some learning disabilities, but more severe.
Yeah.
So I knew a ton about it. And yeah, I took Ritalin from second grade until I was freshman year of high school. And my folks still talk about it. I came to them, I was like, hey, I don't think I need this stuff anymore. But yeah, this was I never heard of Adderall until I was in college, right?
Yeah.
But oh yeah, I was full blown, dude.
Yeah, because there's a stat that if you have attention deficit disorder, you're 300 times more likely to be an entrepreneur if you have ADHD. And so I've kind of pivoted this show to speak to that demographic. And it's funny that you were diagnosed because I think it's an interesting commonality in a lot of A, creative people, and B, entrepreneurs.
Dude, it's our way to adapt.
Yeah.
Right? Like I still to this day, if you give me material to study, like 9 people in the room are going to recite it like a fucking robot. and they're going to get it probably, a 95 percentile correct on it. I'll be able to say it so it's fun to hear and you want to buy it, right? Like, and you want to hang out with me.
Yeah.
Like that's how I'm going to say it, and that's how I'm going to get through it. So yeah, it's totally different. That was the way my mind worked. And I mean, I was just not great in school. Even college I loved. In college I did okay for the part that I went there, but even that was only because I got to actually pick the classes, right? It wasn't always assigned.
Yeah, because I was on medication for a few years in high school, and then I did the same thing where I was like, I think I'm okay, and went through college without it just to kind of prove something to myself. But then in adulthood, I was just like realizing all the problems in my life were also the symptoms of ADHD. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can talk to somebody about this. And treatment has been very helpful for me. So
hell yeah.
I feel like everybody has their own path. But yeah, it's interesting how that disorder affects people's lives.
Dude, I think it's a great thing.
And they've shown that exercise is one of the most beneficial treatments for it. So that could be very well like why you...
Repetition, fast pace, cadence, right? Like everything about the bike.
Stimulation.
It was running, and which is almost the same thing. It's just weight bearing. Biking just brought materials and technology and just more efficient locomotion to it.
And I'm also kind of a running addict. I'm trying to get into the cycling, so you have to win me over here. Not win me over. I'm into cycling. I told you I just bought a bike.
Dude, cycling will only help your running.
Okay. Cool.
It doesn't always work vice versa, but it will always help you running because you're stressing the same areas of your heart while you're giving your knees and your joints a break.
Yeah.
Right. So you can train hard multiple days in a row and not suffer from such impact.
Sweet. Yeah. I'm into it. Okay. So where were we? You were doing your eBay business.
So that was kind of first in entrepreneurship. First into the bike shop was right out of high school. I launched a coaching business because folks kept hitting me up for cycling advice, and I did well on the bike, and folks took notice, and then folks started asking me what I'm doing, right? And folks wanted to see the training I was doing. And at 18, you can get liability insurance, and my dad wouldn't let me coach until then. And so at 18, I had liability insurance, and I started coaching folks, $75 a month. And then that turned obviously into a business. And before I knew it, in college, it had grown and grown. And so now this entrepreneurship had gone not into the hard goods, right? Now we're more into the service side, but all still in the cycling realm. I dropped out of college I got a job offer from one of my first bike sponsors, right? One of the guys I met on rides when I started at the age of 14 and moved back to sell high-end real estate. Did that for a handful of years before bowing out. And post selling real estate, I started getting hit up again for coaching, but now was from all this group of individuals that I was hanging out with, which was now, so now at this time now I'm mid-20s, early 20s, and the guys hiring me were higher level execs. And I'd been selling real estate to that type of client profile. And so I had learned how to talk and communicate to that client profile and no longer just talk to like the dudes on the mountain or on the side of the road on their bike, right? Yeah. Like I could actually speak to that clientele. And so, yeah, man, relaunched a coaching business, went way up on the fees and from $75, obviously. So up on, and it grew and grew and grew. And
were you selling that as like a membership model?
Totally. Yeah, It was a membership. There was no way I would take you on under 3 months because I would come right out. I'd say, hey, you're going to see spikes in your fitness very quickly on just because I'm going to have control over what you're doing. But you got to know right now, I can't take credit for any results you get in the next 3 months. I am always looking at 3 months plus out because I need to learn your body and learn you, and you need to learn me, and everything's got to mesh. And so I wouldn't take you on under 3 months was the obligation. And it was a total retention play. And I knew that if you did well, you wouldn't ever let me go.
Yeah.
And so I was incentivized to make you super fit, right?
And this is how many years ago?
Oh man, this is 2009.
Okay.
2008, 2009?
Yeah, because it's so funny that the membership model is now like the hot thing in the entrepreneurial world. And it's so funny that you had that locked in so early on.
Yeah, and I didn't know the word membership model, right? Like I just knew, I was like, no, dude, it's going to be a monthly rate and I need at least 3 months because, again, I didn't know, it was probably 6 months in before I was like, I need to charge a startup fee because the way I came up with my 3-month minimum was I said, wait, I'm looking at the time. I've got to sit down and write this plan. This is a custom plan for this individual to meet X goal. And that did not work for the guy next door that wanted to lose weight and hang with his buddies on the weekends, right? Because I wanted every client. I wanted every profile, racers, weekend warriors, time crunch executives that want to maximize their 1 hour they can ride like that. I wanted every one of those profiles. And so yeah, man, I did the 3-month thing. So I was like, it takes me so much time to sit down and write the plan. Well, then I was like, fuck, Clark, like charge a startup fee that covers that. Right? Just like cell phones have a startup fee and you can't move into an office without a deposit, right? Like, so again, I didn't know, I just knew from real world. None of this was business classes. All of this was just real world. And I was there. And so I learned a ton from my own coaching business and from building that. And well, what happened is now all of a sudden these clients are hitting me up for product advice. And that is not something I'd done previously in my first time coaching when I was in college. This is now happening. And now I'm going to local bike shops with my client and I'm helping them select a bike or footwear or whatever it is. And yeah, the light bulb hit. Hey, what if I open a store that just takes care of my current members? Dude, it'll work. Like worst case, it'll break even. And luckily I had a partner at the time and he was great in that he fit all of them. And so I couldn't coach you if you hadn't been fitted to your bike, or else, dude, I could ruin your knees, right? If we start doing some crazy exercises and your shit ain't right. So yeah, he and I partnered up. I was like, man, we had this great relationship. You're the fitter. He was a mechanic too, right? I'm the face guy, the fast guy, the guy you want to ride with, right?
And he sort of came in just as part of your coaching or what?
So he was formerly an employer. He formerly had hired me when I was in high school.
Okay.
But we always kept in touch, and fitting and bike mechanic was his forte.
Okay.
So we were always acquaintances, and when I started coaching a bunch of folks, I made it criteria. I couldn't start working with you until I knew you were fitted to your bike.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, the entire idea came out over beers. Robert was his name, and Robert and I are having beers, and I've sent him I don't know how many fittings by now, and I don't ever want to get paid for it. Like, dude, that's your biz, right? Like that's your side. That was his side biz too.
Yeah.
And coaching was my side biz, and yeah, so it was one that we were having beers, and we were both being hit up for product advice, and he was tuning their bikes on the side. So that's how it all started. It started because of demand. We can go into all other avenues in my business that didn't start with demand. They started with a concept or an idea or a dream. Because it started with demand, and that made it a lot easier to launch because I didn't have any money, right? Like I didn't have any backing, so I just had to rely on relationships.
That's nice that the demand was there, because I think a lot of people, when they're getting into entrepreneurship, whether they have employment or they're freelancing or whatever, they know what they're passionate about and what is fulfilling, but they can't find the demand for it, or they're searching for the demand.
Yeah, like they're like, oh, let's see how the market responds to this. Yeah. I'm like, dude, I just don't throw darts, man. Like, some people, and look, no shame. Like there's a lot of folks that have thrown darts and done real well.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, whenever folks are like, well, see what the market says. I'm like, hold on. Now I see what the market says when it comes to pricing, right? Like if 5 out of 10 people say that seems expensive, they're right. And here's the deal. In my attitude, if 2 out of 10 tell you it's expensive, they're right. But that's my way to throw a dart. But it's not dream something up and hope it does well.
Yeah.
I just listen to people, man. And if I see a lot of things in common, and be open, right? Like, I think if you're open-minded, you're going to come up with whatever it is. But if you try and sit there and dream up and beat it to death, dude, I'm just not into it.
And it's the taking action and testing that actually makes you figure things out. You can never think your way to the perfect product or whatever,
No, you've got to flop. If you don't flop a couple times, you have not done it.
This could be called the flop till you drop podcast or whatever, because I feel like that's the story of a lot of people's lives. But I had a question about, you were saying you have these kind of 3 archetypes maybe in that early years of guy next door with his friends.
Oh, for coaching, yeah, for kind of clients that I wanted to market to.
Yeah. Did you feel like those were just the people you were already working with, or did you feel like you had to niche down further? Like these guys will pay this, but this guy won't, so maybe I don't even need to market to the guy that can't pay this anymore. Was that ever on the table?
God, I wish I could say so, but no. Man, one of the worst attributes I got from my father is I don't say no a lot. Now, look, you'll hear me lately. I love bragging about how charismatic my no's are. I've gotten really good at it.
Charismatic no's, that's great.
Dude, I'm good at saying no. And I'll leave you feeling great about asking me.
Yeah.
But it's early on, God, I was terrible at it. So no, I said yes to everything. If you had, again, I hung around a lot of strong personalities, and that's how that's how I got strong. But it's also, I got pushed around a good bit, but I learned from it every time. So I'm not sitting here complaining and licking the wounds. But dude, I did a lot of pro bono. I coached a lot of guys that was asked for me to coach, right? And every time I learned something from it, because it's for me, coaching was learning. It was really learning personalities more than it was learning an athlete or how an athlete responds. Man, it was adapting to a personality. And if I could get you to buy into me, I knew I could put it on paper and you'd do it, right? I'm not going to ride with you dude, I am not going to go out and do that interval with you. No, sir. Like, you've got to do that. That's part of it. That's part of the growth. And I knew if I could inspire you to do it, it would be a match. And if you did it, and I saw it, because now with technology, I can see everything you're doing when you're on your bike. It's one of those that I was like, oh, I'd invest even harder. Right. And it was it's a relationship thing. And, you and I, again, damn it, man, we should have hit record right when we entered the room. We were talking about waiting tables. Yeah. And I said, everyone should wait tables. You learn more about people and you learn more about personalities and adapting. Right. And for me, sales and entrepreneurship are the same thing. It's adapting to personalities, and it's being open, and it's learning, and it's listening, and it's just paying attention. But yeah, it was one that, I learned those were my profiles because I learned who paid the bills.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
And that's where I had to shut off. And I was I've always been more business than an artist. I've been very lucky to surround myself with very, very creative people, and occasionally it rubs off on me. But I've found that if you invest in your customers, you create a community. If you create a community, this shit is way more fun, and it doesn't feel like a job, right? Like, it's a total career, and it really is. Like, we have created a community of customers and supporters of Victory and of cycling in Memphis.
That's amazing. I think there's a million tangents we could take on all of those, but I had one question for you, because you're so passionate and you're so involved. I think with a lot of entrepreneurs, they'll start a business and they make themselves irreplaceable, and then, they don't learn the skill of the charismatic no, and it's like their relationships or their health or something starts to fall off because they're so locked into their time being consumed by this thing, and they don't really know how to extricate themselves from it. Have you ever struggled with that and had to pull yourself out in certain ways, or no?
100% all the time.
Okay.
This is going to turn into a therapy session in a sec. All the time. Number one, I'm so glad you didn't say work-life balance, because I would lunge across this table and choke you and explain to you. No, that sounds malicious. I would very forcefully reply with said no successful entrepreneur ever. Like, quote me on that, dude. No successful entrepreneur ever says you need to work on your work-life balance.
Well, I think that phrase was designed for like people on salary, like employees.
Oh, yeah.
There's too much commingling of work and life as an entrepreneur.
Look, I'm grabbing a beer because that shit gets me fired up. When, but no, your question's great, Alec, and that is, look, I if I didn't have this headset on, I'd happily show you a terrible head of hair. And, I look at when I started Victory in 2010, I had beautiful, thick hair. Man, it was good. It was good looking. And yeah, a lot of it was hereditary, but no, it's the stress, and it's everything that comes with, we just celebrated 11 years in business, and
congratulations.
Thank you. And the stresses, I would never, ever give up. Right. And absolutely, there's tons of sacrifices that I've made and I've been making because I've decided to go on my own path. And, and every time with that success comes a whole new round of trying to figure out that balance. And with every employee that employee that I'm able to bring on, that comes with a whole nother set, right? Because it's not we don't add numbers. I'm one of those, I always say, no, I'm one of those successful bike shops where the owner's present, right? Like, I love being at the store, and it's one that I love what's going on with my team and what's going on with my staff. And it's we're sitting at 8 full-timers right now, and it's a number that I know everyone, and we know everything. We like to know everything about each other and what's going on in our lives, because, we spend more time with each other than we do with our spouses. But yeah, man, it's definitely, there's been a lot of times, and I'm not great at it. I've gotten better at balancing work and life. And, for me, my biggest thing is, I hate when I look at new employees and I go, dude, you're going to, when folks come and want to work with me, and they, and why do you want to work here? And, well, I love to ride. Well, dude, everyone loves to ride. Like, literally everyone loves to ride. That is why the city has bike share programs, because no one looks at a bike and says, no. Like you look at a bike and you go, shit, that looks fun, right? And maybe it's time, maybe it's not. But it's so I always say, well, that's great, man, but you got to know the second you work here, you are going to ride far less than you did before you worked here, because we're in the business of making sure other people have great rides. And so a lot of times that means you're either too fatigued to go ride, you're tired, dude. You've been on the sales floor all day, you've been on your feet all day, or you've talked about bikes all day. The last thing you want to go do is do it, right? You're fried, and you got to have a lot of passion, dude, to keep that going. Or you're riding at times that are not necessarily when most folks would ride. And, for me, I found that it's best, I get my workouts, my ride done always first thing in the morning. Because if I don't, it doesn't happen. And I say that I bet you less than 5 times a year I'm able to go for a ride outside of first thing in the morning.
And what's first thing, like 5:30?
Yeah, man. When I was racing and training, now 6. I'm always on the 6 or 6:30. I try not to go. You got to be out before 7, or else you run into school overlap of traffic, and I don't mess with traffic.
Yeah.
I'm always on the bike by 6:30. I find that if I get my workout in or my ride done, it's not always a workout anymore. I'm not training for anything, but if I get my ride in, I'm so much more pleasant. My brain's more clear. I'm able to be happy for you about your ride. I always tell folks when they go, God, you ride early. I'm like, yeah, dude, or else I got to be in here all day and smile and act really happy for you and your ride. Right. So there's little things that I've had to do along the way to realize for the long play in this and for my interest and for me to also give you my best. I've got to go first thing in the morning.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of or read the Miracle Morning book?
Full disclosure, whenever somebody starts anything with "Have you read?"
It's a no. Yeah,
dude. It's it's a hard no.
Yeah. I'll cheat a little bit because I listened to the audiobook, so I don't know if you can still say you've read it, but
I'm going to say you have.
Okay, cool. Well, the audiobook's on YouTube for free, you guys, but this guy basically was a big salesman in his early 20s, and then he got pancaked by a drunk driver, and so he was in the hospital and he was all laid up. And when he was trying to recover, he had all this brain damage and stuff. He didn't know what to do. And he looked up best self-help habits or whatever of the greatest people. And he got these 6 and he was like, okay, well, I'm just going to try first thing in the morning to compress these 6 things into an hour or whatever. And so it's purposeful silence, meditation, and then affirmation. So kind of being I'm committed to creating a bicycle studio that's successful or whatever. Then visioning, close your eyes for 5 minutes, picture yourself as the owner of the said bicycle studio, then exercise, and then read something or listen to something in your case, and then journal is the last one. But it's
he does that every day?
Yeah, but compressing it down to where it's 5 minutes of each, or 20 minutes of exercise and 5 minutes of this or 5 minutes of that. And I've been trying it this month, and it's really great. And
what time do you get up?
I'm doing the same thing you're doing. I get up at 5:30, but then I'm doing the stuff after I'm feeding all the cats and dogs. It's by 6, the thing has started, and then I'm done by around 8. But so I'm stretching mine to 2 hours. But
damn, you feel good?
Feel great. But I was thinking what you said about how the tail of that effect goes all day. I'm such a less prickly person when I've done that first thing in the morning, and there's never time to do it in the afternoon or night.
There ain't no way.
There's no way.
Or you would give a shit effort, right? It'd be a 50% effort.
Yeah. But it scratches kind of all those itches of okay, well, I can lay down to sleep tonight knowing at least I did those things,
See, it's one so check it. I admire that, and I can't wait to be able to do that. But it's one, and my wife says it best because she, it is true. My wife is uber supportive of all my efforts, and while she does roll her eyes sometimes when I launch a new business or launch a new effort, she also backs me and knows and trusts me. And she'll tell you, man, I'm behind my computer first thing, right? I've read all about, I've read all about entrepreneurs that, talk about what they do first thing in the morning. And you hear all these horror stories of touching electronics first thing in the morning. But dude, bicycle retail is open 24 hours a day. My brick and mortar is open 36 hours a week. But but business is happening all the time. And, my email inbox is the most insane thing you've ever seen. It really is. And I'm not boasting. I'm not proud of it, because I'm telling you, like, it's one of the hardest things I do is put up away messages. For the 1 to 2 times a year I get to put up an away message. And that's only because I know what's compounding in the background. And there's a lot of beauties to having multiple different businesses, but there's a lot of curses too. And that a lot of them are always open, and some of them are only me while others have employees. So I can't wait to do stuff like that. But right now, because during store hours, the person who enters the store is the most important person in the room, and not the guy on email, right? And not you and whatever you have going on. It's the person in the store. And because of that, you got to make sure all that other stuff is handled for you to think clearly to handle the person in the store and to service the individual in the store. And so that's where it's like, man, my mornings are chaotic out the gate, but I tell you, I don't know if I'd give it up. I've got a vacation coming up, and I'm going to give it up hard for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, but then I'll be aching to get back. I really will. Like I've found some sanity in that.
Yeah. They say entrepreneurs get addicted to control, and it's like what ceilings us. And I've found that with myself, where I'm like, I get so in the weeds on certain podcasts where I'm like, okay, well, I could let that go to a freelancer or something, but I'm so scared,
Yeah, well, dude, we're also we're entrepreneurs, right? And I believe we're competitors.
Yeah.
I'm 100% a competitor, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I would hate for someone else to get that podcast.
Yeah.
Like that, if that's not your attitude every fucking day you go to work, dude, you're not going to do well.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up, I answer that in the most timely fashion. Now, yes, I've gotten better about, I don't answer emails on stuff and texts on stuff much outside of business hours. But when I'm selling stuff across the globe and those messages are coming in, I'm certainly not going to wait till 11 a.m. Central Standard Time when the store opens to answer that email. Because number one, I can't, because somebody's walking in the door. But number two, now it's who knows what time there. So, dude, it's. I think you have to have that mindset. And I certainly don't want to lose a sale.
Oh, totally.
Especially not due to my lack of communication or delay in response time.
Yeah, I think what I meant is, could there be a VA that could do all of that stuff that then you could open up a slot of time to do something else?
Yeah, in the future, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, is like that quandary of like, I do this and it's hard to let it go, but yeah.
So check this out. So you'll like this term. Hold on. There's one quote I got to give you real quick, and that's, I think Mark Cuban said, he says, entrepreneurs work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40.
That's it. Yeah,
dude, there's 100% true. I wouldn't give it up, but it's so I recently just made a huge hire, the biggest hire I've ever made, period, in any business, just personally, and a gentleman with way more experience than me, and it's huge. And I was very, it was, the nervousness was, obviously this was one of the bigger professional steps I've taken in a long time, and biggest commitments I've taken in a long time. And it's one that a close mentor of mine here in town that owns a huge insurance company, he said to me after he said, congratulations, he goes, I'll never forget when I hired a CEO. That's essentially what I did. And I go, yeah? He goes, yeah, when I hired a CEO, Clark, I realized I get to now work on my business and not just in my business. So focus on a couple words here. I get to work on my business and not just in my business. Not in my business. No, you can't just take a step back, but not just in your business. And it has, the all the different things that I've let go of that are turning out phenomenal, right? That at first I was like, fuck, I hope I pulled them right.
Yeah.
Man, I've never let the leash off on this one, but damn, okay, that looks really good, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's allowing me to work on the business and look at some of the bigger stuff and make the next hire that I think is going to get us to the next level that goes with my trajectory. Because, Alec, every time we meet, you're like, how is biz? And I'm like, dude, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like I if I get bored, it's not going to work, right? Like back to ADD, I'm always launching something new, always. And that's the way my brain thinks. An entrepreneur either says, I can do it better than what's currently being provided, right? Or you have the more inventor, which is like, I have a better product for that. Dude, I don't recreate the wheel. I just do it better. And yeah, that's what I'm focused on.
Yeah, when you were talking about newness, that's also a big thing with ADHD and entrepreneurs and creatives. Like we love variety, we love stimulation. So the follow through on things can lack sometimes, or you like starting things, but then once the newness is gone, it's not as interesting anymore. And I remember you said on another podcast, I heard how you started this whole other fascinating business that was like Build-A-Bear for bicycles. And you ended up pivoting away from that. And there's just a million decisions and things that went into that story that I heard that I think would probably be useful to this audience in terms of we love starting things, but then how do you know when to stop certain things?
Yeah. Man, as an entrepreneur, I'm very fortunate that it didn't lose money. But in my mind, because I do put a ton of pressure on myself, that was my biggest failure. And it was my biggest failure because I had such big hopes for that model. And I'm super fortunate that I was able to pivot and it both was profitable and I was able to leverage a lot of the foundation laid into what has come from it. I'm scared shitless that the next one probably I won't be able to pivot as hard on and I'm going to have to swallow. But yeah, it's one. Yeah. So I launched, that company was called Pedaltown, and Pedaltown was a model that I built that was, when I explained it to folks, I always said, Pedaltown was a Lenny's. Like one made a income, but 5 made a great income.
Yeah.
And the beauty of the Pedaltown model was 5 made a great income with very, very, very little hands-on. And my whole idea around building Pedaltown was about being as hands-off as possible, because the only problem with the Victory model is that it's hands-on. The best part about the Victory model and why it works is because it's hands-on, right? Like, but basically it was this very streamlined process, and I'd built this whole thing out and written the policy and procedures and hired the staff and created the template of what I was going to launch in the next 4 stores, and that was a goal to do over the next 2 years. And I go back and I'll tell you again, like the reason my model's successful is because I'm present. Like a lot of entrepreneurs want to create something and back out, and they got mailbox money coming in. Like, dude, that ain't me. I'm there every day. I love to vacuum the floors because I want to make sure my floors look great, right? And so I'm right there, opening, closing, everything. And it's one that Pedaltown, I saw that the second holidays at Pedaltown. I'm looking at the numbers because I'm one of those small businesses that I file my taxes before February. That's always my goal. And I always love blowing people's mind when they're like, damn, you're already done. I'm like, yes, dude, because come spring, it's all hands on deck. I ain't got time to count numbers. And
people are riding bikes.
Yeah, so I got to get it done now. And plus having your dad as an accountant who's asking you every fucking Sunday, buddy, you still haven't got me your numbers. You still haven't got me right. Like
everyone I know who does their taxes in February has a parent who's an accountant.
Because you can't get away from being asked.
Yeah.
Right? Like just like you said, like sometimes we're not the best at follow-up or remember the follow-up. Well, man, because we don't, like I hate when people chase me.
Yeah.
Right? And so what can I do to stop that? I'm going to stop it. So I'm going to give you what you're asking for. So yeah, man, it was one that I was looking at the numbers, and I'll never forget looking at the numbers, and more than 80% of Pedaltown customers were Victory customers. And that's when I realized, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And what I was looking at that, and how I'm saying it is I had the ability to sit there and look at X amount of my income was coming from Victory and X amount was coming from Pedaltown. And if 80% of the buyers at Pedaltown were also buyers at Victory, that meant that I was putting out all of this effort for 20% more business. And that was a lot of effort, right? Because at that time, my days were structured, and there was a certain amount of time that was spent at Pedaltown. There was a certain amount of time that was spent on Pedaltown, and that was taken away from Victory. And very quickly I looked at it, and that It just didn't make sense for me anymore. And the beauty is I had a very, very easy transition in that a couple different scenarios, and I met with a couple different mentors that helped me through this. And at the time I was leasing that building that Pedaltown was in. I owned the building Victory's in. And
so they were next door to one another?
Next door to one another. So I was on the hook for a long-term lease. So I knew either way I had to come up with another business for that space, or dude, that was going to be a $2,500 a month nut that, was just going to sit just going to sit over me.
Yeah.
And I worked on a couple different concepts and ran down all over, from food to pet. I don't want to give too much because some of this stuff is still in the works, but ultimately I decided, because of its proximity, I would open up the wall and expand Victory. Why not expand the great model? And if anything, it would give me more room for community events and more room for soft goods, which I wasn't displaying all the soft goods that I wanted to display, and no shops in town mess with apparel like we do. Like that's kind of a forte. So yeah, it allowed me to do a handful of things. And for me and my mind and my ADD, I was able to absorb the $2,500 into just being a mature entrepreneur, eating it and figuring out, okay, well, how do I expand this so that I can make that expense go away? And dude, it worked. We liquidated all the Pedaltown inventory. I was very lucky the way that all played out, because that could have been embarrassing. We can go into that. But it was one that, when I expanded Victory into another 20, doubled in size, we went from 2,500 to 4,700 feet. And when I went into that space, it paid itself back in about 45, 47 days, which was insane.
Yeah.
Like the ROI on doubling our size was incredible. And I saw it because I was there and I knew how I would use it and I knew how I would like it. And if I'm in my store more than anyone else, I know it'll work. And that was always my concept, like create a beautiful store if you're going to spend all your time there, right? Like have great staff if you're going to be with them more than your spouse. Like all of this stuff comes full circle. And I knew that if it made me happier and gave me more room to give you my best, customers would pick up on it. And expanding Victory and closing Pedaltown ended up being one of the more profitable things I did in the last couple of years.
That's an awesome story. I think there's a million lessons in there. I just read an essay by Tim Ferriss. He has like these 17 questions that quote unquote changed his life. And one of the questions he asks a lot is, do I need to make it back the way I lost it? And basically in the context of the way he phrases it is that he had this house in San Jose that lost all its value, and he was moving to San Francisco, and so he didn't want to sell it because it had lost all its value. So it was just sitting there empty, and all of his friends were like, you need a management company to try and rent it out and all of this. And he was like, well, if I lose $1,000 at a blackjack table, is it really the best idea to try to recoup it there? Like, probably not. And so if he's losing money on the mortgage payment of the empty house, does he really need to cover it by renting the house? Or could he, create income elsewhere, like through speaking gigs or whatever?
For me, man, I went back to the that guy was trying to play blackjack with high rollers and trying to play blackjack at the neighborhood, the neighborhood casino, right? Well, he really quickly realized that it made more sense to play with the high rollers where he had been playing, and like, dude, focus on your customers and nobody else's, right? Like, there's one for you. And in the early stages of Victory, a mentor of mine bopped me on the head and said that, because I had this mentality. Again, I'm a competitor. I had this mentality: if you bought a bike anywhere other than Victory, you were stupid. You're clearly uneducated, but you're stupid. Why would you not buy one from us? Look at what we do. Look at what we do. And I'll never forget. And I didn't say that, right? I wasn't vocal about that, but that was my attitude. And I was offended you bought something somewhere else, right? And I had a great mentor that said, hey, dude, focus on your customers and no one else's, right? Like, don't bitch about the guy that bought something somewhere else. They're not your customer.
Yeah.
Focus on the dude that's buying something for you right now. Go talk to him. Go get to know him. Go ask if he wants to go for a ride. Go show him your favorite roads. Go tell him something cool about his bike you didn't know, right? Like invest in your people, right? Like get a customer, not a sale.
Yeah.
And so that again, that all that kind of comes full circle. And for me, it was one, I launched Pedaltown to go after a different market. I launched Pedaltown to be between a department store and a specialty retail store. Well, I don't know department stores and I don't know department store buyers. I'm not around them. I'm around specialty retail store buyers. And so I only knew to go back to my blackjack table. And I just knew, hey, there are more things I can do for my blackjack table. I don't know, I'm using your analogy now.
Yeah, we're mixing the metaphor, but I dig it.
But there's more things I can now do for my blackjack table at my own space with more room.
Yeah.
Right. And that was my mentality. And yeah, I couldn't be happier I did it. And look, it's even blossomed more into now I own that space and I don't rent it anymore. And it was one that is one of the best things I ever did. And also at the same time it was super embarrassing. I hired a great copywriter to write up a press release, how wonderful it was that we were closing. But yeah, secretly down deep, man, like, it hurt. It was a lot of time, it was a lot of time.
Yeah.
Again, fortunately, the financials of it, everything worked out. But again, I'm going to keep quoting mentors. But a great friend of mine I'm about to do a big bike ride with always says, dude, thank you for your time. And he says all the time, man, time is our biggest commodity. And right, just like I can't wait till I can do the meditation and the 5 minutes that per segment that you're explaining. It's what time is our biggest commodity, man. And that's I get upset when I invest in something and it doesn't have a return because I put so much time into it and I just don't have a whole lot. So yeah, it goes back to that your question a bit ago, and that's time management and balance and it's if you love what you do, it's not work. And I love what I'm doing.
Yeah. I could talk to you about this stuff for hours. So let's see. I would love to touch on the one thing, and I guess we sort of got into that, but how a lot of entrepreneurs, creatives, ADHD, we spread ourselves really thin by trying to work a little bit on a bunch of different things, and that sometimes commitment to one thing is what actually drives our results. And it's really exciting to check out all the different things, but if you can find a way to build variety and newness into one thing, then you can have a lot of success. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in bicycle retail, right? Like if somebody says, what do you do? I always say specialty retail, but there's so many different avenues of it, and it's my agenda to keep creating those avenues, and it helps me stay more relevant. And also I like to be a bit of a trailblazer, and I that sounds odd saying it as my own, but I do a handful of stuff that's very proprietary, but I do a handful of stuff that's not proprietary at all, and it's stuff that takes time and it takes a team. And that's also why I know nobody will ever compete with me on it, because they don't have a team like I have, and they won't dedicate the time like I have. And I say that all the time, and that some of my biggest successes have cost no money to start, and it's been all time, and it's been all passion, and it's been all care and consistency and follow up, right? And these are the things that you can't add to cart. Right? These are the things you can't just go and scan. Look, I do a couple things every day. Number one, I have a list. Every single day I have a list. I have scratch sheets of paper. I don't have a journal. Again, I'm jealous of people that do it all on their phone. I've got, every single day, 30 minutes before my store opens, we have a staff meeting. Everyone stops what they're doing. We stop opening and closing duties. The opening duty. We stop opening duties, and we all meet to go over and delegate what's up for the day, as well as I get to go ahead and tell them everything that we're being worked on, so everyone knows which way we're headed, right? And I run it very, very, very transparently, and I run the bike shop like a business, not like a bicycle shop. And I hope you sense my sarcasm when I said bicycle shop. Man, I have a list every single day. And yes, I use my Google Calendar. I live on my Google Calendar just because it sends me alerts, and I have to have alerts. In fact, while sitting here today, I've emailed myself twice notes that'll go into my Google Calendar, and you're like, I don't even add it on my phone anymore because I'm afraid I'm going to click the wrong calendar and the alert doesn't go off at the right time. So I just email it to myself. So when I'm in a controlled environment around a desktop, I know the alert goes into the right spot.
Yeah.
Like I'm that like, dude, control the controllables.
Yeah.
I say it all the time, like, man, I know it works. Well, and I have a list every day of stuff that I need to accomplish. And a lot of times that list starts that morning, 5 a.m., that list starts. Because I'm always prioritizing. Just like I go back to time's our biggest commodity, I'm always prioritizing. And, you know, this may sound bad, but again, I learned this in real estate. Man, I had a great teacher. And all of this stuff is translated into business. And entrepreneurs, please pay attention. And that's do what makes money first. You know, I'll never forget, we'd sit down, and if you were calling about a contract or you were wanting to write an offer on a home, that got the call back before the guy that wants to go see the home. They're both super important, right? If you don't show it, you may not get an offer. But you got a guy that wants to make an offer, let's call him first.
Yeah.
And so that's always been my mentality of the same thing when I'm prioritizing. And I've got certain things, that have deadlines that have to be out on certain times. So I know, how time sensitive that stuff is. But for a lot of what I do, it's not super time sensitive, and it's more on me and how hard do I want to push. And, I always say, how much gasoline do I want to pour on this effort right now? But for me, it's one that I've got to have my list, and there's certain ones that have to get crossed off.
And how many things are on that list typically? What does that look like?
Sometimes a lot. And look, it can, and by the way, my list is, because I'm a serial entrepreneur, man, and I'm all over the place. So my list can have personal stuff on it and professional stuff on it. And I will put go tan. I'm happy to tell you I go to the tan in bed because I ride at 5 a.m. and I'd be the pastiest, whitest cycling dude out there.
Probably look like me.
And it's hard for you to pay attention to my rad gear if you're the pasty white bike shop guy, right? Like, but literally I will put tan, go to bank, get gas. Literally I will drive until my car is like 10 miles till empty because I don't have the time or I don't feel like stopping and pumping gas.
Totally.
And it's literally, and I say that as I micromanage every task I've got. So it can have personal stuff as well as it can have call back so-and-so, get pre-order done for so-and-so, follow up with sales price for so-and-so, get with your manager about merchandising the new apparel that's coming in, right? There's create the route that you're riding this weekend, get the email out about the ride this week. Like there's so many different things. Fortunately, a lot of them, I can tackle pretty quick. Some of them I can delegate off, and that's what I use my 10:30 staff meeting for, is whatever I can delegate, I try to. But there's certain ones that, I look at immediately like, man, what makes money first? I've got 8 salaries that are supplying their families on the income of Victory, and that's my biggest stress, right? That's what gets me out the door every day. I'll be a big kid, and but I've made commitments to my 8 staff members to take care of them. Yeah,
that's a great incentivizer for prioritization because a lot of ADHD brains, because the executive function is sometimes lacking, prioritization can be difficult, and you want to kind of just go to the stimulating thing. Like, I want to work on branding again today. But like you said, there's a great metaphor I heard where like a lion is in a field and it can eat the field mice that it's finding. And it's like, oh, well, that's food, but it's not hunting the antelope, and the antelope will keep it alive. But what the lion doesn't know is that the mice won't keep it alive. Even though it's eating, it will slowly die. And a lot of people do that in business where you're doing these tasks and it's like, oh, well, I did something, but it's a mouse and you're slowly going to die. Whereas you need to be focusing on getting that antelope.
Dude, it's so funny you say that. That's how I look at whenever a potential competitor comes into my space. That's how I look at what they're doing, right? Like after I first analyze location, team, right, all that, I look at what they're doing, right, and it's the same thing, and that's how I know, right, and it's again, man, I am a competitor. You have a lot of choices when it comes to buying your bicycle specialty goods and apparel and services, and I want to make sure that we're the one at the top, and so what are we focused on? And we're focused on the customer, not the sale, and as long as we continue coming back to that.
So to close us out, if you had a piece of advice, what would you tell yourself if you could go back to when you were starting out?
So the big picture, I was, so I guess it kind of goes back to the eating the field mice thing.
Yeah.
And that is, my business used to be built around a very higher end customer profile. And it was really, really built around that, marketed to that. And it wasn't until I was able to step back and look at who was in my store and who wasn't for me to realize, hey, I need to diversify my efforts and I need to go after who's in my store and not this market that I thought I'd built this place for. And what's turned out great is I've retained those that wanted to be retained, and I've gotten even tighter those that potentially would not have been retained. And all of that has led to a much more sustainable business. And yeah, I'd say if anything, I wish I would have realized that probably earlier on, because I made myself sick. You know, it's, man, when you're working for high profile individuals and high need individuals, you feel that, right? I stressed over a pretty not terrific customer base for a long time. And it fried me, dude. It almost fried me in the sport too.
And not to dig in too deep, but are we talking a high-end demographic or a low-end demographic that was stressing you?
I'm going to say both.
Okay.
I'm going to say both because it's one that, you know, being in the service business and not the retail business and is difficult, right? If that's my forte, I've got to deliver on that. And when you choose to take care of some of the folks that are accustomed to being taken care of, it's very demanding.
Yeah.
It's very demanding. And yeah, at a certain point, man, ADD gives way. And I'm like, why am I spending X amount of time or so much time on this one relationship? Dude, it's fatiguing me from the rest, right? And it's the same thing as like, man, I need to focus on victory and not Pedaltown. I need to focus on what's taking care of me and what's taking care of the business.
Yeah. It's like the 80-20 rule where 80% of the problems are coming from 20% of the clients and 80% of the income's coming from the other 20% of the clients. Let's work with the good 20%.
Yeah. So it's really like, I think the biggest thing is it took me years to recognize that. At the same token, I call that a failure that I also learned a ton from.
Of course, yeah.
So now I'm like super receptive of it. Like, Clark, is this a customer that's going to be great for the long term?
Yeah.
Right. Like how much of my retention practices do I want to put into this?
Yeah.
And then how much do I want to thank them for their purchase and spending their money with us and follow up with them around the holidays every year, right? Like that's the other.
Yeah. That's actually very helpful for me. So thank you for sharing that. Last question. What trait do you recognize repeatedly in the quote unquote successful people in your life and not in others?
Hey, my first is going to sound like an asshole, but it's totally true. If your voicemail is full, you're not going to be successful.
Uh-oh. That's gonna strike a chord out there in the podcast.
Dude, nothing sends me to 10 faster than a full voicemail. Dude, and if you're a competitor with a full voicemail, I am chuckling because, dude, I'm taking all of your market right now because they can't leave you a voicemail about their bike.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the, sorry, not to go on that tangent, but
no, that was great.
But really, as you're saying that, I was like, oh, dude, no, but it's, here you go. It's going to be the same. It's going to be the same answer. It's prioritizing and time management. And you and I spoke a little bit earlier on, damn it, we're going to hit record right when I enter the room next time, but on the difference between an artist and a businessman and how both are important in a successful entrepreneur. But it's one that it's when I see someone that is so much artist and not enough business, there has to be a balance. And you got to understand, my mindset is definitely weighing heavier on the business. I've been very fortunate. I surround myself with uber talented, artistic, forward-thinking people. But if I'm, especially if I'm a competitor or if you're in my space in anything I'm doing, man, I am focused so much on that. And the second I see an opening, I'm going to pounce. And if I realize that you are shitty at callbacks, man, I'm going to roll out the best reply and retention system you've ever experienced because I'm going to take all of your people, because you're going to give them to me, because you're going to keep doing your shit job, right? Like, so I'm so much business. I see it all the time. And I see it with vendors, right? Like a lot of my vendors are manufacturers. A lot of manufacturers are artists. They're inventors. They're wanting to create the next high-end, best spinning wheel with the least amount of resistance, right? Or the best materials that are the most softest on the skin and aerodynamic, right? And dude, I'm always looking at, did they not call me back, their only vendor in Tennessee, because they were busy at the wind tunnel on their version 7.0 that comes out in 2025? Not good.
Yeah.
Not good. And if it's something I'm interested in, I'm going to take it, or I'm going to quickly terminate the relationship because I don't see this going in the long term. So yeah, I'm going to say time management. Somebody that is good at time management and can multitask is typically going to be successful. And that's why I like service industry people. And that's why I watch bartenders, right? Bartenders and baristas, preferably baristas, just a little better environment. But it's service industry people, right? Like watch the concierge at the high-end hotel. Watch the guy that's running valet during Christmas time at the Peabody. Like, watch those individuals, because those are the ones that I want to hire. Those are the ones that I want to surround myself around, because they've got calls coming in. They're delegating. They're prioritizing which call's more important. Do I just need to go get this car? Do I need to answer this call? What order? Right? Like, it's all, man, I look at time management and prioritizers as being the most successful people.
And for those with ADHD listening, those are your two biggest handicaps. You got to just find ways to make it work,
Find ways and just to think about what you're doing and think critically about what you're doing. And you've got to figure out, man, a lot of entrepreneurs need to realize they need a partner. If you keep trying to force yourself to be business and artist, right? Or if you keep forcing yourself to be artist and business, you may need a partner to be successful. And I don't mean for the long term, but I mean to get up and get going. And a partner can do things that an employee can't, right? Because how are you going to teach somebody if you can't fucking do it on your own?
Yeah.
Right. That's definitely one of my attitudes. So it's one of those, like, you've got to be able to recognize that.
Okay. That was a great answer. Where can people find you, Clark?
Dude, I'm the easiest person to track down. I always love saying that. I'm like, man, my habits are pretty constant. Facebook, Clark Butcher. Victory Bicycle Studio is on Facebook and Instagram. I have, since our last podcast, I have my own personal Instagram now. It's Memphis C. So it's ITS Memphis C as in Clark. That's my personal page. But yeah, man, any of my websites, Propel You, Half Ironman Memphis, Victory Bicycle Studio, all that stuff. Any one of those email addresses comes to me.
Sweet. Well, we'll link all to that in the show notes. But thank you so much for sharing all this.
Thank you, man.
For cracking open a cold one on this afternoon. And I just really appreciate you sharing all your insights and experience with me and the audience here.
Had a ball, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for listening. If you liked the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend about it. And the next best thing is to follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a nice review. Also, y'all, if you are itching for a little bit more of this kind of stuff, go down into the show notes and you'll find my Hit the Ground Running newsletter link. And you can sign up for it there. It's free, and it's just a quick message from me every Monday to help creative entrepreneurs like you hit the ground running. It includes a helpful habit, an idea, and a tactic. Also, check out our Patreon. I'm going to be doing a weekly happy hour in there, and we're going to be doing some bonus episodes. So if you're into that, check it out. It's all in the link tree that's in the show notes. But thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.